we commence, Councillor? Good evening, councillors. I open the Governance Advisory Committee on the 11th of August 2026 at 7 p.m. I call on the Deputy Mayor to read the acknowledgement of country.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the land of the Bidjigal and Gadigal peoples who occupied the Sydney coast, being the traditional owners. On behalf of Randwick City Council, I acknowledge and pay my respects to the elders past and present and to Aboriginal people in attendance today.
Councillor D'Souza with the prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Almighty God, we humbly beseech you to bestow your blessings upon the Council and to direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of the city of Randwick and Australia. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please be seated. Thank you. I'll now read the Chairperson's announcement. In accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, I advise that this meeting is being live streamed via Council's website and a person's image and or voice may be broadcast. The live stream recording will be published on Council's website for at least 12 months after the meeting or for the balance of Council's term, whichever is the longer of the two periods. Attendance at the meeting is taken as consent by a person for their image and or voice being live streamed. All present should refrain from making any defamatory comments, it's a good thing generally, but in the presence of this meeting, or releasing any personal information about any other individual without their consent. Council accepts no liability for any damage that may result from defamatory comments made by people attending this meeting. All liability will rest with the individual who made the comments. This meeting must not be live streamed or recorded by others without the prior written consent of the Council. Individuals acting in a disorderly manner may be taken and asked by the Chairperson to leave the meeting. Do I have any apologies?
Yeah, apology from Councillor Martin.
Thank you. There is an apology from Councillor Martin. Thank you. Are there any further apologies? There being no further apologies, can I please have a mover? Move Councillor Rosenfeld, seconded by Councillor Said. All those in favour? All those against, declare that carried. I have a request from Councillor Hamilton to join the meeting via audio-visual link. Do I have a mover? Move Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Rosenfeld. All those in favour?
I also understand Councillor Burst will join later via audio.
Thank you. We have an apology from Councillor Burst for lateness. Thank you. All those in favour, all those against, declare that carried as it relates to the requests to attend the meeting by audio-visual link. Councillors, do we have any declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? We have no declarations. Thank you. Yep, thank you. Can I have, please, somebody confirm the minutes of the 16th of June, the Governance Advisory Committee? Moved Councillor Magna, seconded by Councillor Willington. All those in favour? All those against, declare that carried. Thank you. Before I move to the first item on the agenda, I'd just like, with your indulgence, to recognise the outstanding achievement which was announced today by a group of Randwick City Council staff who represented our council with a high distinction, winning the Australasian Management Challenge in Hobart today. I really want to emphasise that this is quite a remarkable achievement, and particularly given the character of the competition from local government across not just the country but also from New Zealand. And today's results reflect exceptionally on the collaboration, leadership and innovation, as well as problem solving skills of the participants. I had the real pleasure of dropping in on one of their preparation sessions, and I can tell you the eagerness of Randwick Council staff to actually represent Randwick was absolutely electric. There was a huge amount of enthusiasm there, and it is really quite pleasing to have seen that enthusiasm for representing their council being turned into some really quite astronomical results. So I'd just like to, in person, congratulate Hel Wardle, Hayley Valone, Mitch Horry, Greg Langley, Brad Rope and Josh Keane. So congratulations, and I'd also just like to acknowledge Nick Musico for his role as mentor, and Justine McHarg, Zach King and Andrew Addy for their support throughout the program. So bravo on behalf of all of Randwick Council. It is quite the achievement. Thank you, councillors. All right. We now move to the items on the agenda. Governance Advisory Committee reports GAC 15/26, illegal parking over driveway towing policy. Can I please have somebody move that the report be read and noted? Moved Councillor Hay, seconded by Councillor Rosenfeld. Thank you. Councillors, the first question I have to staff from me is, could you please elaborate on your report? Thank you.
Right. Good evening, councillors. The first of the presentations from City Planning this evening is the removal of vehicles obstructing driveways. It's a policy and procedure. The Manager Compliance, Duncan Scott, will present the report to you now. This report and presentation is in response to a notice of motion from Councillor Hay from October last year.
Good evening, councillors, Mr Mayor. Thank you. So, as mentioned, this report and presentation responds to notice of motion NM 9425 from Councillor Hay, adopted by Council on the 28th of October 2025. The motion asks Council officers to investigate Inner West Council's driveway obstruction towing program and report back on the regulatory options available to Council, the effectiveness of the policy, its viability and resource implications of a similar policy at Randwick. Tonight in the presentation, I'll cover 5 areas. The purpose of the work undertaken by council officers, the local context, the detail of the proposed operating model, the risk and governance settings, and then a short summary with next steps. So the purpose of the work that's been undertaken by council officers is to develop a policy and procedure that establishes a clear, consistent and lawful operational response for when a vehicle obstructs a driveway. As I said, this work originated in response to NM 9425, where council resolved that officers assess options for the towing of vehicles blocking access to private property. In assessing the options available to council, we had 3 objectives. Objective 1 was to restore driveway access for residents and businesses, including in urgent situations. Objective 2, apply the powers available to council under the Public Spaces Unattended Property Act 2021 and the Road Rules 2014 in a measured and proportionate way. We acknowledge that towing vehicles is a significant intervention and should be used judiciously. And Objective 3, give officers a single procedure that is consistent, lawful and evidence-based. What we have identified is that driveway obstruction is a persistent and highly emotive issue across the Randwick LGA. Residents and businesses regularly report illegal driveway obstruction. It is a recurring source of complaint to council ranges. In the past 12 months alone, over 740 fines have been issued for driveway obstruction. That figure indicates 2 things, both the scale of the problem and also that our existing infringement response is already active. The impact on the affected occupier is significant. It results in loss of access and considerable frustration. People are missing work, they're missing medical appointments, and they're missing school runs. But our response has to balance three things: community access, procedural fairness to the vehicle owner, and officer safety, noting that towing is a significant intervention and can escalate quickly on the street. That balance is what the proposed operating model is designed to strike. The proposed model uses a tiered response that escalates only where the level of obstruction justifies it. There are three tiers. Tier 1 is a partial obstruction. Now, this is where the vehicle can still reasonably access the property. In this instance, our response would be to issue an infringement, but no towing action. Tier 2 results in a complete obstruction. This is where the vehicle cannot access the property. The response is that the vehicle owner is contacted and given an opportunity to remove the vehicle voluntarily before any action occurs. If the obstruction remains, the vehicle can be towed under the Public Spaces Unattended Property Act. Tier 3. This is the emergency response. This would be where a resident's vehicle is trapped inside the property. This receives a prioritised response and immediate escalation to towing. The key design principle: escalation is driven by the degree of obstruction and the impact on the occupier, not by how strongly the complaint is pressed. The voluntary removal in step 2 is deliberate. It resolves most matters without a tow. It is procedurally fair, and it materially strengthens our position if the action is later challenged. Every operational step in the procedure is tied to evidence, to a statutory authority, and to clear governance. Now, the key legislative basis is the Public Spaces Unattended Property Act 2021 and the New South Wales Road Rules 2014. Evidence: each step requires supporting documentation consisting of photographs, timestamps, contact attempts, all recorded on file prior to escalation. We have the complainant test. This is where the complainant must be the impacted party. That is either the property owner or the resident. This prevents third-party or vexatious reports driving a request for tow. This element is consistent with Inner West Council policy. Benchmarking. The approach has been benchmarked against the Inner West and Bayside Council policies, with Inner West policy being the specific comparison sought by the notice of motion. The risk posture of the proposed policy and procedure is proportionate action, clear records, and defined accountability. If we tow a vehicle, we must be able to demonstrate why that step was justified, and that point in the escalation. In summary, this gives us a faster, fairer, and more consistent way to resolve driveway obstructions across the LGA. Faster, fairer, and more consistent resolution with a single procedure applied across the LGA. Access restored for residents and businesses, the practical outcome the community is asking for. Emergency situations are prioritised and escalated immediately. The process is lawful, defensible, grounded in the Public Spaces Unattended Property Act and supporting legislation. With regards to next steps, the draft policy and procedure will be presented to the Ordinary Council meeting on the 25th of August 2026, where we will be seeking council endorsement to consult with the community on the draft policy and procedure.
Thank you. I have a question from Councillor Hay.
Thank you very much. If we could go back to the slide with the three measures on it. In the event of a complete obstruction, version 2, vehicle cannot access property, so that we will contact the owner. Can I have do we have timeframes? For example, let's say the owner doesn't pick up their phone. How long is a reasonable time frame before they can answer? Let's say a few similar things. Like, let's say they can't move the car for a week. How would we respond to that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. With response to tier number 2, where it's the complete obstruction, again, what we find through the Inner West policy is that approximately 90% of all cases are resolved through voluntary removal. Typically, what will happen is that council officers will contact New South Wales Police, who will have a phone number connected to the registration details. They'll contact the owner of the vehicle and request that it's voluntarily removed. At the same time, council officers will do a check through Transport for New South Wales database, which we have access to, and try and identify the residential address. If it's within the LGA, we can undertake door knocking, so we'll actually attend that property and try and make contact with the resident. That process will normally take 1 to 3 hours. Normally we find that's a similar time frame for us to contract and get the availability of our towing contractor anyway. Yeah. We wouldn't be in a position where we would be requesting voluntary removal for a week. That time frame, normally, procedural fairness would be to contact the owner of the vehicle via phone, make reasonable attempts to contact them if we had details of their residential address, and once they had been exhausted with no contacts, we would escalate to towing.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Willington. I'll then go to Councillor Sid.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Just out of interest, where are vehicles towed to? Is it to the depot and what happens after that?
Through yourself, Mr. Mayor.
Manager.
Thank you, Councillor. The legislation allows us 2 points for removal. We're allowed to remove the vehicle to the same general area, or we are allowed to remove it to a storage facility. Our preference would be to remove it to a storage facility. It's the only way we can be confident on the security of that vehicle. And also if we're looking at cost recovery, it's the only way that we can ensure that the cost associated with towing that vehicle is recovered by council. Currently our storage facility is located in Milperra.
Thank you, Councillor Sid. I'll then go to Councillor Asghari, then to Councillor D'Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If in a situation where, say you've got Fitzgerald Avenue and you've got netball on, and people who live in the house can't find anywhere to park, so they park in front of their driveway or along their driveway. Obviously, there's no complaint coming from the owner because it's their car, but at the same time, are they in essence meant to be fined for parking on a driveway, even though it is their own driveway? Or do they get a phone call to make sure, to tell them to move it so is there a courtesy call to tell them to move it the same as there's a courtesy call if it wasn't their car? Or is it just completely fine? So where's the, pardon?
They're not obstructing anyone, so they're not going to...
No, it is, it's a fine, you're not allowed to park it, anyone's allowed to park it.
Thank you, councillors. That was a question from Councillor Sid to the manager. Thank you.
Through yourself, Mr.
All
Mayor.
yours.
Thank you, Councillor. So, in terms of the policy and procedure, the affected party must escalate to council for the tow. So, in the situation you described, it's unlikely that the resident is going to notify council with regard to their own obstruction. Therefore, as you suggested, they're only obstructing access to their own property. It wouldn't result in a tow. With regards to an offence under the New South Wales road rules, it's with the discretion of the officer. If it's minor and technical in nature, it has no material impact on anyone else. The officer could use their discretion and not take any enforcement action as per our compliance and enforcement policy.
Thank you. Councillor Asghari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. What happens when a vehicle is registered and the owner can be identified but cannot be contacted?
Manager.
Through yourself. Thank you, Councillor. As I set out in the presentation, Councillor, council officers will make reasonable attempts to contact the owner, either through phone call or door knocking if the address, if the owner's registered address is within the LGA. If no contact is made, the vehicle remains. Council officers would arrange for the vehicle to be towed, and once it's towed, relevant notices as required under the legislation would be issued to the owner of the vehicle.
Thank you. Councillor D'Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Duncan, with everywhere I drive, I see these yellow lines outside the driveways. So I have two questions. One is, what exactly do they mean? It prevents someone from parking in the driveway, in someone else's, or blocking someone's driveway, is that right? Does it have it? I know the purpose, but can be enforced, it would be my next question.
Manager Scott.
Through yourself, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, the driveway indicator markings, it's a service provided by Council's Transport Department. They're not legally enforceable under the road rules, so they act more as parking guidance rather than in an enforceable element under the New South Wales road rules.
Yes, I don't know if you can answer that, but what I'm going to ask next, if not through the mayor to the relevant officer. So how much does it cost to get those yellow markings? Is that the same for pensioners or same for all residents? I sort of have an idea, but can you help? Can someone help me on that?
What I'm to the relevant officer, whether it's you, Manager Scott, or the Director of City Services.
Might defer to Director of City Services.
Thank you. Through yourself, Mr Mayor, I'll be able to get that figure for you in a minute, and I'll distribute it.
Thank you. Councillor Luxford.
Just going back to your what you said about parking across the driveway and it's your own car. So you're saying that that's not an offence, and that if a resident did park across their driveway, they wouldn't be booked? Because I know several that have been and are constantly, when they're either parked across their driveway because they can't park anywhere else, or they park in their driveway, but not right in, but not on the footpath, and they've had to get the shopping out for 5 minutes, and they've been booked, but because the person they've complained about's moved, and then they're the ones that get sprung, in the meantime. So you're saying it's not, they won't be booked, or it's not an offence to park, because I always believed it was.
To the manager.
Through yourself, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Yes, Road Rule 190, New South Wales Road Rule 198 it makes it an offence to stop on or across a driveway. There's no reference in the New South Wales road rules as to whether the owner of the property or not. It makes no difference on the road rule. Having said that, Council's compliance and enforcement policy allows for officers to have reasonable discretion and take enforcement action based on the level of impact and obstruction. In instances where an offence may be identified but is minor and technical in nature, in this instance, if a resident's parked across their own driveway, they're not impacting any other party, then in that instance, the council officers investigating could use their discretion not to issue a fine.
So I've seen no discretion, to be honest. So, yes.
Councillor Luxford, that's an interesting question. Through to the Director of City Services to provide a supplementary answer to his earlier one.
Thank you. Through yourself, Mr Mayor, Councillor D'Souza. Council's fees and charges for parking delineation lines for driveways for a usual application is $220 per driveway. And I'm pleased to advise the delineation for driveways for a pensioner is $20.
May I speak just one?
A question from Councillor D'Souza.
No, it's just a compliment actually, Mr Mayor, because pensioners in the old days paid the same price. And I have a lot of elderly residents who support me, and they complained. Mr Brownlee and Tony Lehman, the former whatever officer he was, they worked on it and they brought the price down to $20. And to me that was really good, because a lot of my elderly residents were being inconvenienced, ambulance and that doctors couldn't access them. So it was more to say thank you, that's all. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor D'Souza. Are there any further questions? There being no further questions, I'll now put that the report be read and noted. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much for your report. Thank you. The next item is GAC 16/26, Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure recent planning reforms. Can I please have somebody move that the information be received and noted? Moved Councillor Gordon, seconded by Councillor Veach. My first question is to the Director of City Planning. Could you please elaborate on your report?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councillors again. So this presentation is really just for information for you, and it is providing an overview of some of the more recent reforms that the state government has brought in relation to planning matters. So Frank Coe, the Manager of Development, and I, Development Assessment, and I will take you through some of the key elements of those reforms. All right, so what we're going to talk about this evening is 4 areas. The ministerial statement of expectation orders that came in on the 1st of July. We'll talk about the state government's requirement on us in relation to DA assessment times, and then two new areas that the state government is looking at. One is variation to compliant development. The other one is a new development type called targeted assessment pathways. Now, the order that, as I said, came in on the 1st of July, outlines some expectations that the Minister has on councils in relation to planning matters. So it is firstly in relation to DA times, referral times, so getting information in to allow the assessment of a DA, contributions, how we review and how we spend our contributions, money on the delivery of infrastructure and facilities, planning proposals and strategic planning matters. So we'll just skip through some of those in a minute. If a council is not meeting the expectations that the Minister has put in, they'll do a couple of things. Firstly, they'll try and work with the council to try and see what improvements, well, how they can help, I guess, what improvements in particular that's happening around DA times. But if the council is not showing improvement, the Minister has the power to step in and put administrator in to administer our planning matters. All right. So Frank's going to take you now through some information on assessment times.
Thank you, Meryl. So as mentioned by Meryl earlier, one of the key reform is the introduction of stronger expectations around development assessment performance. So councils now are expected to lodge applications within an average of 7 days, complete adequacy review within 4 days, and finalise internal referrals within 21 days. The new expectations also sets progressively shorter target assessment timeframes, moving from 90 days currently down to 80 days in 2027 and 65 days from July 2028. Local planning panels are also expected to determine regionally significant development application as soon as practicable, or an average of 20 days after council has finalised the assessment report. For Randwick, this is generally a positive as our current average DA assessment time is 69 days, and which is already below the initial targets, and our lodgement timeframe is also performing well at 3 days. The broader message is that the state government is placing a much stronger emphasis on efficiency in housing delivery, and councils will be expected to continually improve and demonstrate good performance. Modification applications are also being targeted for faster processing. The most significant change is for section 4.551 modifications, which is generally related to minor corrections, minor errors or misdescriptions. These applications must be determined within 14 days. If not, the application cannot be refused. For other modification types, such as 4.5 by 1A and 2, the state has introduced progressively tighter assessment targets over the next few years. While the intention is to provide greater certainties and speed for the applicants, Council will need to carefully manage resources and workflows to meet these shorter timeframes while maintaining assessment quality. Yep, sorry.
Okay. As I mentioned, the other thing that the government is asking us to do is to ensure that councils spend the money they receive through development, so their contributions. So for us, it's our 712 money. So they're wanting plans to be reviewed every 5 years, and they're also wanting us to spend 20% of our reserves each year over an average of 5 years. So we're tracking pretty well in relation to that. In 2024, you adopted the new or the reviewed 712 plan for across the city, and our K to K plan we have a 712 plan for the K to K corridor. That does now need to be reviewed. It was adopted in 2019, so we have commenced that process as well. And then in relation to our spend, we are on average spending just over 35% of our contributions reserve across the city in relation to everything, as I say, roads and drainage and matters like that. The other area they've asked us to have a look at is, of course, the planning proposal. So that's, of course, the rezoning of land or the changing controls in relation to land. So we've got, at the moment, our current one is, of course, the Randwick Junction planning proposal. They're asking us, of course, just to be more efficient in relation to how we do things with the department and the steps we follow, which we do anyway. We're not sitting on our hands. We are moving our planning proposals through really rather quickly where we can, of course. The thing that is interesting though, which they have put in this order, is they're encouraging councils to use what is called a concurrent DAPP or DA rezoning process. So that's the process that the state government are currently putting in place for the HDA or the Housing Development Authority proposals, right? So we have a good 15 of them within the city at the moment. So that is, they're asking councils to try and put something in a process similar. They're also encouraging, which they have been doing for some time, is instead of the minister signing off being the planning making authority, it's the general manager of the council, but that only occurs once you as the council has signed off on the planning proposal. So for example, again, the Randwick Junction one, the minister is not the body that signs that off, it's the general manager that does that. With his approval, we send that into Parliamentary Council for making. The other matter is also, you will remember, in around the 2020s, you would have done a local strategic planning statement. That also is now needs to be reviewed, so that is on our agenda to do that. This order is encouraging us to start to do that as well, which we are as a council, asking us to look at planning controls that encourage development. So of course, height and FSR, see if around development viability. And it is also encouraging controls. I'm not quite sure what inadequate control is, but trying to encourage to ensure that our controls are comprehensive and not too onerous, I would think. However, we cannot do this work until the state government gives us their planning framework in relation to not only the whole of Sydney metro area, but also for the region. We have not yet seen a final version of that draft plan, or their draft regional plan. All right. The next area which is a set of reforms that sits on its own, which relates to variation of complying development. Now, just to remind you, a complying development certificate is a planning pathway that covers developments such as dwelling houses, dual occupancy, commercial development, those smaller scale type developments. Those developments must comply with the provisions that are in state environmental planning SEP. So not our controls, it needs to comply with the state government controls. And of course, as you all will know, private certifiers can issue those CDCs. However, you cannot vary that CDC. If the controls within the SEP cannot be varied, they must match it to the exact points. So if it's a 900 metre setback, you have to comply with that 900 metre setback. You can't vary it. Now, what the state government have brought in is that you can now vary a CDC. However, the certifier can't do it. It's got to be lodged with council. So the certifier will go, oh, well, let's say that side setback doesn't comply. We need to put a variation provision and we need to do a variation application to council to do that assessment. We've got 10 days to do that assessment, and I'll talk about that in a minute. However, you can't vary everything. There are a few things you can vary. So you've got height. So for example, for a dwelling house, the code says a height of 8.5. These provisions say you can do a 0.5 variation, so the height of that dwelling can go to 9, for example. There are heights some variations in relation to dual occupancy, so that's mainly in relation to some issues around access, car access and lot width. I couldn't understand those controls, so I'll have to ask Frank to unpack those because they were reasonably complicated to explain. And then there are some variations in relation to tree protection control. So what that actually means is that the current control says the setback must be at least 3 metres from a protected tree. The variation says it can be that 3 metre setback can be varied if it's supported by an arborist report. Now, the provisions aren't locked in yet. They're on their way. So the government has done some consultation on this. Randwick Council, along with many other councils, has lodged a submission to really put our concerns here. So our concerns is, one is, it's okay to do a variation, but if we don't consider it within 10 days, it's a deemed approval. Not a deemed refusal, a deemed approval. So we need to be really on top of that. The other issue, of course, is when you do variations, let's say in particular it might be height variation, there are all sorts of things that are looked at. It's not only overshadowing, it might be view loss, it may be a whole range of things. Under a DA, of course, we will do a really detailed, comprehensive assessment of that. The time frame and the justification of information that we may or may not get from the certifier or the applicant does not allow us to do that. So there are some concerns of what does this mean in relation to streetscape character and what happens on adjoining properties. However, we'll wait and see what happens when the provisions actually do come out. All right, and the last one.
Okay, back to me. Now, the targeted assessment is probably the most significant structural reforms being proposed. It creates a new assessment pathway, as what Meryl mentioned earlier, that sits between the CDC and DA. Right. So the intent is to assess low impact, low risk, low rise housing development through a streamlined process with a target assessment timeframe of 50 days. The proposal is based on the idea that many planning issues can be addressed upfront through strategic planning and a standardised code, rather than through a full merit assessment for every application. So under the proposal, a single statewide code would apply to low-rise housing, such as dwelling house, dual occupancy, manor houses and multi-dwelling housing. And that code will then override council's LEP and DCP. So the department's view is that, this will then create a greater consistency, certainty and efficiency across New South Wales. However, there are also concerns regarding the reduced role of local planning controls and the potential impact on local character and site-specific considerations. The department is currently reviewing submissions from public, including council, and the draft set will be prepared for further public consultations. Ultimately, the targeted assessment applications will be assessed by council. Now, in terms of the implications, so look, overall, I think these reforms means greater state oversight, stronger accountability, and a heightened focus on assessment performance. Councils will no doubt need to continue improving assessment timeframes, manage the new processes such as the CDC variations and targeted assessment, meet development contributions, spending expectations, and support housing delivery outcomes. The reforms also increases the potential for ministerial interventions where performance expectations are not achieved. I think that's it. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Gordon. Councillor Gordon, Wellington, Veach. Councillor Gordon, and then Sid.
Thanks, Mr. Manager. I've got a couple of questions. Firstly, you mentioned that the assessment time is meant to be the lesser of either the previous assessment time in that financial year or the targets that they've provided. So if we're already approaching the target, does this not incentivise us to reduce the assessment time as slowly as possible, because the new year essentially is our ceiling for the previous year, in that say if we have an assessment time of 69 days as we do now, surely we would be incentivised to only reduce that to say 68 or 67 days, rather than putting any significant effort into reducing it further, because then that would become our ceiling.
Thank you. Through to the Manager of Development Assessment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Look, we have been maintaining consistencies, so we just business as usual. So at the moment, we see no needs to reduce or slow down.
Thank you. Follow up.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As my second question, you mentioned that the LSPS must now align with state planning priorities. Previously, I believe you mentioned that the minister would have the power to, in the assessment lens, have the power to appoint an administrator for our assessment department. What are the consequences if our LSPS does not align with state priorities? Can the minister what are the consequences, basically?
Okay. Through you, Mr. Bader, Councillor Gordon. The previous LSPS needed to be signed off by the minister. So I would say if we are non-compliant, he wouldn't sign it off and we would be asked to review it, I would assume.
Thank you. Councillor Wellington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The 10 calendar days. 10 calendar days is really not very many working days, and if there happen to be a public holiday, it could be only a week in terms of working days. Will this put pressure on council and other implications for resourcing and staffing, and how do you anticipate being able to manage this?
Through to the Director of City Planning.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wellington. We've got a couple of things in place. Firstly, Frank's got a very good team that runs the lodgement process. So as soon as one of these applications come in, they move quite quickly through the system and they would be allocated. Secondly, we would need to be reviewing it really quickly to see if there's sufficient information for us to do the assessment, right? And I would assume if we don't get, if the information isn't there, we would then put the application back for refusal and for insufficient information to allow us to do the assessment. If the information is there, yes, we would need to be allocating staff in Frank's team to do that, right? So I guess we need to really see what it means in relation to volume. However, I'm assuming we will get a fair few of these as applicants are trying to, it's not quite a DA, not quite a CDC, they'll give it a shot through this process. Did you want to add to that?
Councillor Veitch.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions. Thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I have a lot of questions, but I think I'll just narrow them down to, I think it was like one of your slides at the end. Maybe you can bring it up. It's the targeted assessment and new approval process. I think it might have been like the second last. Yeah, just about this new low-rise housing code. So this will be imposed on councils. It's not going to be developed by council planning, strategic planning staff, put out to community consultation and tweaked. It's going to sit above the LEP and DCP. Can you go into that a little bit more and actually perhaps give us a definition of low-rise housing, because it also refers to like multi-dwelling housing. Do you have any more information as to how that's going to operate? Because that seems quite far-reaching.
Through to the manager.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Veitch. This is a standardised, this will be a new standardised code, right? It's a combination of all the housing code that currently exists in New South Wales. So they're looking at consolidating all that and then establish a new standardised code that's a state policy, so that sits above the council's LEP and DCP. Right. In terms, yeah.
So we're just telling you what
Yeah,
it is.
in terms of the low-rise housing, right, so as I mentioned earlier, the intent is, the low-impact, low-risk types of development. So that includes single dwellings, dual occupancies, terraces, townhouses and manor houses. These are all currently, considered to be part of the low-rise housing diversity code. Right, so they're the types of development that what this new concept is targeted.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Thank you. I now go to Councillor Sid.
Just a few questions, yeah. So, beginning with the S712, actually reviewing the K to K, because I probably would it be right to say that because K to K, when it initially started, all the money received from K to K was meant to stay within Kingsford to Kensington. So it probably would not work out to spend 20% of that annually. Is that why you're looking at it?
That is correct. I mean, there's a couple of reasons why works in the K to K area is not as fast or robust as elsewhere, is because there's so much development happening down in that corridor anyway. The city services team with the city planning team are now starting to develop, based on the schedule of works in the K to K plan, is starting to prioritise when those works will occur. It's also, I guess, timely now that we've got a number of development applications approved through that corridor, is to go back and relook at 712, the community infrastructure contribution and the affordable housing contribution, because it is now, the climate's very different now than 2017 and 18 when it was developed. Yes, Councillor, you're correct, because there's a clear schedule of works that tell us where that money is spent. Beg your pardon, yes.
With the variations of complying and development, if there's a slight departure definitions of slight departure are probably going to be different council compared to a certifier. Is there an actual rule of what a slight would mean?
There
You
is,
know what I mean?
yes.
Okay.
The guidelines that they have tells you how far you can push that variation.
And then with the targeted assessment, as Councillor Veach was saying, within that 50 days, because it's virtually everything in the top line, the dual occupancies and the manor houses, et cetera, would have to be probably within Central Ward, South Ward, would be the greatest percentage of compliance. So that means nearly 60 to, I'm taking a guess here, 60 to 7% of everything you do has to be within 50 days. A very large percentage of everything that goes through DAs would have to be.
You are correct. So we would need to be making sure that when the clock starts on those DAs, given we're at 69 days at the minute, that a fairly complete application is lodged, is accepted by council to allow us to do that assessment within that time.
Yeah, so in essence, we'd be targeting the 50 days.
When you say it that way, yes, you're correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hay.
With regard to the 10 calendar days to assess the application, if we don't, it is deemed approved. I'd like to ask about how we would handle a situation if a bunch of applications were to come in on the 24th of December. Specifically, that's a Thursday. So, and you would have to have judged the applications by the 3rd of January, which is a Sunday. So you'd have 2 weekends and you'd have 3 public holidays. So that gives you 3 working days in which to assess all the applications. I imagine a fair amount of the department would be on leave as well between Christmas and New Year. So how would we actually manage to handle a potential flurry of applications all at once?
Manager of Development Assessment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hay. Look, we are equally concerned about this timeframe. We are in the process of waiting for what the final outcomes of the minister's decisions, and in the meantime, we are exploring options of, fast tracking that particular type of applications. So we're, utilising potentially we're developing tools, to help us to, carry out that particular assessment.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hay. This matter, if I recall correctly, was raised by a number of councils in relation to when there are significant holidays. It has been raised. I mean, the whole process is not for us to refuse them, but is to move them through. So I think the department will be aware of that in relation to the development of their guidelines.
Thank you. I have a question just in relation to sorry, Councillor Escara, you were next. Did you have a question? No, okay. My question relates to the CDC variations in the 10 days. So there are 10 days, so where there is a material variation, it then gets referred to council. What is council at the end of that 10 days actually? Is council the issuing authority or is it the certifier?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, we're the consent authority for the variation to CDC.
So my query, so are we issuing so we're issuing the CDC rather than, it's not considered as a development assessment?
It's a variation to CDC.
A variation to CDC.
Yeah, it would be a certificate,
so
similar to CDC.
Fair enough. So my question then comes of, if it's a material variation, so because CDCs have very different consultation, well, they don't have consultation requirements on them, they have notification requirements. What information does council actually have to materially come to a view as to whether or not those variations are significant or of such that would have adverse impacts? Because there's no consultation requirement, you don't actually have the ability to receive that information, you're just looking at it on its face. Is that right?
Yeah. These variations, as far as I know, right, they're meant to be very minor, so it shouldn't be a situation that will result in any adverse, amenity impact to the adjoining neighbours. So on that basis, it was deemed to be, a straightforward process. It's just the whole point of it is to try and, increase the housing targets and at the same time making the assessment process easier for the residents.
So what I'm just trying to get at is it appears to me that it is a merits assessment which is going on, despite the fact that it really is actually supposed to be a question of compliance.
So,
Through.
Mr. Mayor, in relation to if I'm hearing your question, what justification are we given to justify the variation?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, in submitting that certificate for variation, the applicant is will be required to provide us a number of things based on the variation. So they will need to outline the variation, justify the variation in relation to how the reasons and justifying the variation, provide appropriate drawings, and ensure consistency with the guidelines that guide what variations occur. They doesn't need to do, like in relation to a variation to a DA, for example, you have to go to extreme requirements to justify that under the Act. You don't need to provide that level of information. It's a much shorter version of a clause 0.6 justification for the variation. And then we need to do that assessment. What I'm not sure if we can do is to ask for additional information. If we can't do the assessment based on the information we're given we've only got 10 days, we would probably refuse it.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? There being no further questions, I'll now put that the report be received and noted. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. We now move to Governance Advisory Committee Report 17/26, Street Furniture Contract and Bus Stops and Bus Shelter Policy. Can I please have somebody move that the report be read and noted? Moved Councillor Asghari, seconded by Councillor D'Souza. My first question to the Director of City Services is, could you please elaborate on your report?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have here tonight Council's Acting Manager of Infrastructure Services, Jake Irvine, who's filling in for Ryan Zammit whilst he's on leave, but in his incumbent role as Coordinator of Engineering Services, and then previously Manager of Engineering Services while Eva was also on leave. Jake is responsible for looking at the new street furniture contract and the planning proposal that we're looking at to facilitate that new contract coming out, but also here to give council an update. There's a few motions at hand in terms of the policies that do support this whole exercise. So Jake will give you a presentation on that tonight. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Todd. Good evening, Mayor Parker and Randwick City Councillors. As Todd alluded to, I'm here tonight to discuss Council's future bus shelters and bus stops policy and elaborate on some of the work that we've done in the background to date following some notices of motion, and also just provide a little bit more context following last month's council meeting on the street furniture contract itself, or the proposed street furniture contract itself. So we'll quickly run through just the purpose. We'll give some context, what we've done, how we got here, and what we're planning on doing. We'll cover a little bit of detail, that detail being some of the particulars and the kind of principles which will govern, or which we propose to put in our policy and govern the street furniture contract relating to the design and location of bus shelters moving forward, and then also some of the contract particulars of that proposed contract. We'll cover some risks, and then I'll just finish it off by summarising with some next steps before we go to questions. So as I said before, the purpose is to provide some additional background and context following Council's resolution CS 3526 at last month's council meeting. The report itself was a proposal to amend our local environmental plan to have provisions to include bus shelter establishment by or on behalf of a council or a public authority to be exempt, and there was some action items which arose from those discussions which related to the bus stops and bus shelter policies. So this is a bit of an opportunity to talk about how they link to each other. And then, so following on from what I've said before. So in 1998, Council established a street furniture contract with JC Deco. This was run by, or in collaboration with a number of other councils at the time. However, Council is in a single contract at the moment with them. That contract's set to expire on January 2027. Separately to the contract, council officers have been putting a lot of work into developing a set of principles and running those principles to develop a priority list of action items for bus stops and bus shelters throughout the local government area. And we do separate those because there's different works associated with each. Simultaneously and in tandem, but also in separation, council officers are seeking to advertise a new contract which is intended to be used to enable the sustainable rollout of the policy and priority list. So going into some details about the principles of the bus shelter and bus stops policy. So specifically focusing on location. So what I alluded to before is the work which our council staff have been doing is that we've kind of collated some Opal data which has been given to us, which is specifically tap on and tap off data. It's really important information to consider where people are waiting for buses, so the tap on number is very important in making those decisions. But also in line with that, we've done a bit of a bus stop audit whereby each stop with its correlating Opal data is rated based on its existing infrastructure. Does it have a shelter? Does it not? Is it formalised with concrete? Is there tactile surface indicators? Is there a bin? Is there a seat? It's a real overall quality score of what the bus stop is looking like and how it's serving our patrons at the moment. Through that, targeting high use, low score areas, that goes into then how we upgrade the facilities surrounding the bus shelter and whether or not we do decide to put a bus shelter in, because not every bus stop is necessarily requiring one. In line with that, the rationale which is used by council to determine where bus shelters are put in is often carried through the contractors of these bus shelter contractors in other council areas and in this council area. They often focus on high use routes where they can see benefit from advertising, as we could probably presume. But at the end of the day, with the location, council under the proposed contract and as we are currently practicing, holds discretion for final approval about those locations. So whether or not they propose to put one in a certain location, we have the discretion to say no. We don't think that that's appropriate. So with the bus shelter designs will always be done to maintain accessibility and improve amenity, considering how people with mobility impairment might move through those bus shelters, accessing them, getting onto the bus, so on and so forth. And then also there's, the after consideration to function is look, which is still of a very high priority, is matching the impacts on the area's character. And again, council will always retain discretion for final approval of the design of the bus shelter. So just moving into some of the contract particulars. So specifically just going into the advertising first, council under the contract, the current contract and the proposed contract, any successful contractor from the tender will be required to comply with advertising restrictions per legislation and other council adopted policies on a case-by-case basis. If anything falls outside of those guidelines, those parameters, then council holds ultimate discretion to determine whether or not a certain piece of advertising is displayed in our LGA. under the contract, so there's kind of mutual benefits which come out of the contract, which I'll get into in a little bit. Under the contract, the successful contractor is fully responsible for maintaining, renewing and upgrading any bus shelter which is within our LGA and included in the contract. So there'll be some heritage-looking bus stops which we'll choose to maintain ourselves because of the value that they hold. However, any bus shelter which looks like a standard one, currently managed by JC Co, will be their full responsibility to manage those. They also need to, they're also responsible for procuring the advertising which is on those bus shelters, so no council officer is burdened by the resource implications of that. There's two types of bus shelters to simply put it. There's advertising shelters and non-advertising shelters. Advertising shelters are seen as, I guess, the asset which favours the contractor the most, that generates revenue. So that revenue is then put back in towards the maintenance, the renewal, the upgrade, and it also, portions of that are shared between council and the contractor, and that's all set through the competitive tender process, which we will embark on soon. Non-advertising shelters is where we can see opportunity to kind of make ends meet with our priority list. So in addition to the advertising shelters, council has the power under the contract to instruct the contractor to install non-advertising shelters as required. So based on a priority list, we could facilitate the outcomes that we are looking for through that avenue as well. Where council elects to construct a non-advertising shelter, council's income through the contract may be impacted. It may go down or up depending on the way that interaction is made. And at the end of the day, especially with whether it's advertising or non-advertising shelter, council retains discretion to determine whether or not a shelter goes in or not. I guess there's a few risks, obviously, with the outsourcing the advertising or the bus shelter program to an external contractor. So there's a reputational and image risk that inappropriate shelter locations or inappropriate advertising content is displayed. This is mitigated through the actual contract itself. It's a bespoke contract which we've engaged market professionals to design to limit these risks, and it's also guided by the relevant legislation and council policies. A financial risk which could arise through this street furniture contract is that failure to establish a new contract could reduce council's revenue and increase our expenditure for maintenance and renewal, as it would then be passed on to council's existing suite of officers to make ends meet in that front. Establishing a new contract, factoring in the principles which I've just gone over about the design and the location determination allows us to go forward in a controlled way, but make sure that we are establishing a sustainable contract in that front. There's also a bit of a safety risk. Should there be no renewed contract, or should it not be done in a timely manner, there's potential that our bus stops may become dilapidated, or once damaged there may be reduced turnaround times. And the way that we're mitigating that is to make sure that, as currently exists under the contract, the new contract will require the contractor to have strict routine maintenance protocols and emergency response timelines in their remit. So following this, we're going to go discuss internally, just with making sure that the principles which are included in this presentation are supported in the tender documentation. We intend on issuing a tender in August 2026 and returning to council in September 2026 to formalise a draft policy reflecting what I've presented on tonight. And then in November 2026, we intend to come back with the tender outcome of that street furniture contract for rollout in early 2027. And that's all from me.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Magna, then Wellington, then Beach.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks very much for the presentation and for the work you and your colleagues have done to date. Couple of questions. Why did we separate the combined contract previously that we had with adjoining councils, and why have we strategically chosen to go it alone for this particular tender? Secondly, are we going to have a target number of bus stops that will be included in the contract? contract, and will that be something that we'll be able to communicate to the community when they might expect a bus stop, where they might expect it, where ones are under consideration, and will we as elected officers have access to that information? And are there innovation opportunities, finally, third question, innovation opportunities associated with smart technology, real-time feedback for commuters to be able to know when the bus is expected to arrive, charge their mobile phone, or any other innovations that the tender will invite the contractors to submit to council for consideration? Thank you.
Thank you. To the relevant officer.
Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. The original contract was procured as a joint venture, but it resulted in the establishment of completely separate contracts. So throughout the years, different councils, City of Sydney, Bayside Council, Waverley Council, they've since procured new contracts as their standalone contracts was considered at the time to be, from my understanding, to be a better approach to the market as a one-off rather than a collective. But we're in that boat as a result of our decisions and other councils as well.
Thank you.
Two more.
The follow-up questions.
Yes. Sorry. So the reason why we're kind of proceeding as a collective at this point is because the outcomes of the street furniture contract and the amount, I guess, the amount of revenue which is finalised in that contract itself will be pivotal to the capacity of bus shelters that we can roll out sustainably. So whether that be, 1 or 2 or 5, it really depends on the quality of the proposal which we get. So following that, we will formalise a priority list and have that circulated. So a bus shelter and a bus stops priority list.
Thank you. Your third question.
So the last question was on innovation for bus shelters. It's a pretty common market. The way that the contractors approach the market these days is that they're always looking to incorporate new things for commuters. It will be incentivised or highlighted in our request for tender that we try to do things to improve the amenity or the comfort for people utilising those bus stops. So if that's innovation, then that's innovation.
Councillor Wellington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. Very, very interesting. Bus shelters are a very significant, very visible part of the street for the community, and of course used by many people who are not commuters during the day, especially by people who are during the day often older, often less well off, vulnerable in all kinds of weather, and in relation to climate change and increasing heat events, the bus shelter is a real, shelter. If you're stuck on the street waiting for a bus in something approaching 40 degrees, you're not going to do very well.
Is there a question?
Thank you.
There was a question.
There is the question. This is the context of the question. How will the contract address this issue and allow the community to be assured, and for us, when we're assessing the outcome of the tender, how can we be sure that the question of refuge and climate will be addressed, and particularly in relation to things like orientation of the shelter and also green roofs? I know that some other councils have green roofs on their shelters. Thanks.
Thank you.
Do yourself, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor. Following the intention is to go out for a request for tender. Following the execution of that contract, there's proposed to be a phase where designs are discussed of the shelters. Typically with these rollouts of street furniture contracts, there's a standardised design which is replicated in most areas. Naturally, each site needs to be considered on a case-by-case basis depending on existing infrastructure, whether there's trees, the width of the footpath, so on and so forth. So I guess to answer your question, it's a phase at the beginning of the contract to settle that final design, which allows us to consider comfort and amenity, as I've highlighted before. However, on a case-by-case basis, we have that discretion to influence the design on an ongoing basis as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, just through yourself, Mr Mayor, if I can just add
Director.
to that, councillors, the intent of this contract is to capture, from an asset perspective, as many of the sort of standard bus stops as possible that are maintained by the Street Furniture Company. But to Jake's points earlier in the presentation, there will be times where we do operate outside of that contract for certain bus stops as well, where design itself is done on a case-by-case basis. As an example, the Coogee bus stop at the beach, or a brand new one that council may have at the time, and we'll assess at that point, is it worth administering that potential bus stop under the contract for maintenance and an asset perspective, or is this a heritage bus stop or a standalone bus stop that requires council's own design, in-house resources to look at? So that there is that option as well.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Veach, then D'Souza, then Rosenfeld.
Thank you, and my question is similar to Councillor Willington's, but just to be crystal clear that when we get the tenders back, they will include designs, and those designs will come to council to vote on. Like, it might be a range of, each tender might have a few different designs that might be suitable for different locations, and we will have an opportunity to see those and vote on them.
Through to the relevant officer.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the contractors, or sorry, the tenderers will submit standard specifications of street furniture. So each company that is available on the market has a similar product, but unique in their own way. So council will be able to see how each tenderer is proposing to offer their bulk standard bus shelter. I would note that they're not intended to be overly bespoke, these street furniture contracts. They do have a standard template, but as Jake has mentioned in the presentation, they must consider the amenity of a commuter at the bus stop, the accessibility, the protection of sun, wind, rain, access to the bus stop itself. So they are standardised to an extent, so they can be easily maintained on a bulk scale. Should a bus stop fall outside of that for whatever reason, then we have the discretion to put one in ourselves and design it ourselves. But there will be standard specs that will be provided in the tender that council can see.
Thank you. Councillor D'Souza.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, about 2 Sundays ago, I was on my way to the local football team, Lapuru's Junior Football League, but as I walked past Lapuru's public school, one of the oldest First Nations schools, I noticed a bus shelter there. It was run down and rusty, and it was an eyesore. I sent a letter to our general manager, who responded straight away on Monday. Lauren Bonamini, the director's secretary, emailed me and said, look, we've done an audit, and the school, it's not really a bus stop. It's a bus shelter which has a relationship with the school, because with school buses or only function like a couple of... So my question, Mr Mayor, to the director, whoever the relevant officer is, how are we going to address this problem? I know, looking at the notes, it'll impact council's finances, or will it impact council's finances? I can't see JC Decor, whatever they call it, just put a bus shelter there, because advertising would be wasted. So how would we address this concern? Will we replace the bus stop at our own expense, or will we just pull it out and not have a bus stop there at all? But it is a bus stop during school hours.
All right. Thank you very much. Question from Councillor D'Souza to Mr Evan.
To yourself, Mr Mayor. The bus stop in front of Lapuru's public school is not an active bus stop, so it's not used by commuters to wait for buses. It would fall outside of the street furniture contract as such. It's not utilised for commuters. Council would maintain or renew that bus stop as it's seen fit into the future.
Thank you.
Separate to the contract.
Councillor Rosenfeld.
I was just going to ask, do we actually go out and seek companies to advertise on our bus shelters, or is it more a process of those that come to us and then we assess them?
Thank you.
Do yourself, Mr Mayor. The responsibility for procuring advertisements is purely on the successful contractor. So as an example, currently JC2Co, council doesn't involve themselves in that process. They have to comply, but we don't involve ourselves. They do that whole heavy lifting process.
Thank you. Councillor Sett.
I'm pretty sure at the moment there's a compliance where we actually can advertise some of our events on some of JC. I think there's somewhere in the contract they allow us to, if we have an event on, we're allowed to advertise at certain times and certain bus stops. Will that continue on into the future, or is it not cost effective?
Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. That's something that we can definitely consider. What is typically done within the industry for requests such as that is the standalone advertising bollards. They're usually located in high traffic pedestrian areas, and it's common practice for an apportionment of the time, because nowadays they're digital advertising, and that you can get multiple slots in within a minute or two, for a portion of that timing to be dedicated to council, so that we can put consultations on news or advertisements or whatever we see fit on there. So to answer your question, yes, that's a possibility.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? There being no further questions, I'll now put that the report be read and noted. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Well done. We now move to the confidential session. So we'll have to close. Could we just turn the recording off, please?
Fantastic.
Thank you. There being no further business and that the confidential reports were all carried as read and noted, I declare the Governance Advisory Committee meeting on the 11th of August closed at 8:34 p.m. Thank you, councillors.